Battle Breakdowns, the battle between Walter versus Alucard. This is something I've wanted to do for a little while now, but just like with my character conversions, my greatest weakness is probably self-doubt. So I always end up talking myself out of actually doing it. But just last month, D&D Shorts released a video in which he did a battle between Vecna and Orcus, using their D&D stats. So it kind of inspired me to finally try this, now that I know that, it actually is something that can be interesting to watch. His was a lot more flavorful than what mine is going to be, as he is inventing a D&D story, whereas I am taking what is already a story and converting it into D&D. So it'll be slightly different, but the overall idea is the same, I think. Now, as I said in the beginning, this will be a battle between Alucard and Walter from Hellsing. Setting the stage, both are going to be level 20 characters using the builds that I've made in my character conversions. Slightly changed in some ways, like for instance I changed Alucard's 9th level spell to Wish. Alucard will be a level 4 vampire using the transformation rules from Grim Hollow. He will also be starting this fight without his 8th level spell slot. As I stated in his build, Incendiary Cloud was my best way to kind of represent him releasing his 0 level restraint and having all of his souls go out and attack everybody, so he'll have already used that here, so he won't have the 8th level spell slot. Now, I haven't really worked out a battle breakdown for Alucard fighting Anderson, but looking through it and just getting a rough idea of how it felt, I don't feel like he really cast any major spells during that, so I think only the 8th level spell is what needs to be taken up here. Other than that, he's starting out just as he is, and because he's released his 0 level restraint, whatever his immortality ability is that allows him to, be shot to swish cheese and still come back, is it's not important, it's not here anymore, because he doesn't have access to it right now. So he's just a regular PC for this. Walter, on the other hand, will be a level 1 vampire using the Grim Hollow transformation rules. He's bargained with the GM in this case to finally allow him to have the illusionist bracers. He's tried to get him the whole campaign, obviously, but the GM just wouldn't let him have it, but he talked him into it for this. So he traded 2 of the vampire levels in order to get those illusionist bracers, which of course are going to be quite useful in this fight, and he used the 3rd level to trade for an extra fee, which he took Metamagic Adept. But because the GM is still wary of the overpoweredness of the illusionist bracers when combined with a warlock, he did add one caveat, which is that every round after the first round of combat, Walter will take 2d6 damage. It cannot be reduced, cannot be negated in any way. Walter seems perfectly fine with that. He doesn't think the fight will last that long after all. Oh, one last note. The Grim Hollow transformation for vampires actually increases your dexterity by 2, but it can't increase it beyond 16, I think. So to kind of make sure that just doesn't get wasted, I decided, it would make sense that the players would build in such a way that they'd get to use that, so I'm assuming that Alucard has managed to build it in such a way that his constitution gets 2 points higher, along with his dex was lowered too, so that it could get that +2, now his constitution's 2 points higher, and I think Walter will have done the same thing, so that way his strength ends up at 10, I guess. Now on to the fight. Initiative is rolled. Walter wins. He decides to have a little bit of fun with this and kind of have a bit of a setup round. He casts Armor of Agathis on himself, giving him an extra 25 temporary hit points. He knows he'll need this as Alucard is about 50 points higher than him on average. For his bonus action, he used Hexblade's Curse. He needs that extra 6 points of damage on each Eldritch Blast after all. Now it's Alucard's go. He decides he'll also have a bit of a setup round. He's going to use some of his vampire powers from Grim Hollow to summon 2d4 swarms of bats. He rolls and gets 4. Not bad. And then for his bonus action, he will quicken Alter Self in order to give himself a d6 natural attack. I think it's fair to say that his player isn't fully taking this seriously yet. After all, why would he want to go into melee? Round 2 begins and the fight really starts. Walter uses both his action and his bonus action to cast Eldritch Blast, striking each swarm 2 times, killing them. He doesn't want to have to deal with more than one opponent, as just dealing with Alucard by himself is going to be tough enough. Now it's Alucard's go, and he's going to make sure he gets full use out of the magic items he has. He activates his Eldritch Claw tattoo in order to give himself an extra d6 of force damage on unarmed strikes. He moves in to attack and hits without much issue. Then he burns a point from his Blood Fury tattoo, increasing the damage by additional 46 necrotic damage. But he's not done there. He now taps into his vampire powers to spend a Fury point, increasing the damage by an additional d6. All of this averaged together is 25 hit points. He perfectly tears through Walter's temporary hit points and comes within just a hair's breadth of managing to hit him. Unfortunately, he also takes that damage back. Round 3, and Walter couldn't be happier. Alucard is a little close for comfort, but he has his whole turn to just lay into him and pile on the damage, which is exactly what he does. He casts Eldritch Blast, and with his bonus action, casts it again using his Illusionist Gauntlets. Each one is also combined with his Repelling Blast invocation to build up some distance between them. With his very last hit, he actually manages to drop Alucard 0 hit points. Alucard is forced to use his Strength of the Grave feature in order to only drop to 1 hit point, barely surviving. Walter's a little frustrated to not be winning like he's expecting. He ends his turn, and he takes the 7 points of damage, the average of the 2d6. Alucard's turn, and because he is a 4th level vampire, he has 10 points of regeneration at the beginning of his turn. And he's never been so happy for that. He's going to use 2 sorcery points to cast Darkness and still be able to see it. But he's going to use an additional 2 sorcery points to quicken it, so he can cast it as his bonus action. Then he'll use his action to cast Eldritch Blast, firing from the castle. He's hoping that the darkness can both defend him, and because he can see through it, it will make it more likely that his attacks hit. And while his attacks would have hit, Walter casts Shield to block them all. He uses another sorcery point for Seeking, hoping that maybe a 5th shot will hit. And he has no luck. Round 4. Walter doesn't want to have to keep playing this game, and he can't shoot blindly into the darkness, so he casts Dispel Magic, getting rid of it. But because he didn't cast Eldritch Blast, he won't be able to use the Illusionist Gauntlet in order to cast it as a bonus action. So he takes another 7 damage and ends his turn. Alucard regenerates another 10 hit points, but he still doesn't want to go toe-to-toe with Walter like this. So using 3 sorcery points, he summons the Hound of Ill Omen. Leaving that to deal with Walter, he dimension doors away. About how far he would go, I'm gonna estimate about 240 feet and probably around the bend of something, so he has total cover. That way he's able to move out, and then he'll still be able to attack at distance if he were to use Eldritch Blast as well and combine it with distance spells so he can shoot farther. But he's also still within Walter's range, and he knows that, so he wants to be behind total cover for this. The Hound goes, but Alucard knows that it's really just a distraction. It attacks, but it doesn't hit him. Round 5. Walter's up. A little high on his success. He doesn't even really think about the situation he's in right now and just immediately casts Eldritch Blast and decimates the Hound. 42 damage to do it because he doesn't have Hexblade's Curse on it, but he damn near kills it. It only has 55 hit points. But it's then that he realizes he doesn't know where Alucard went, and the clock is ticking for him. His health points are getting lower than he would like. He didn't think the fight would last this long, especially not since he can just lay so much damage onto a single target. Now using his Mystic Arcanum, and the GM rules that he will be able to quicken it using the sorcery points that he got from the Magic Adept feat, he dominates the Black Hound of Baskerville, using his mental command to tell it to find Alucard. The GM rules that this will switch the target of the Hound of Ill Omen to Alucard, so it knows exactly where he is, and on his turn will begin moving there. Walter ends his turn and takes 7 points of damage again. Alucard's up, regenerates 10 hit points. He decides to step into view of Walter. Using a sorcery point, he wants to cast a distant Eldritch Blast. He's going to cast it using the Jackal. Because it was meant to take out Anderson and make sure that he couldn't regenerate, I figure that the Jackal is probably some sort of... It would be a magic item that can be used as a spellcasting focus, and then the spells that you cast through it, in this case we'll say specifically Eldritch Blast, it can probably make 1 or 2 of the blasts of Eldritch Blast function like a sword of wounding so that the damage can't be healed. Not that it's really going to matter here, because a curse on the Jackal activates and it detonates, healing the damage of the Eldritch Blast to Alucard. 10 damage. At this point, Alucard's player is very confused, looking at the GM for some form of explanation. Walter's player very smugly leans in and says, "Did you forget who made you that gun? That gun was made to kill Anderson, and I'm no Anderson." Alucard's getting a little worried, knows he's on his back foot, and doesn't want to have to take the damage he did before, especially not when his health points are so low. Backed into a corner, spends 2 sorcery points to quicken his Wish spell and fully heal himself. It's the Hound's turn. He dashes to make it 100 feet closer to Alucard. 6th round. Actually, I think I forgot to mention Alucard probably would have moved back behind cover so that way Walter couldn't attack him at range. So for this turn, Walter just double moves to go after the Hound, and at the end of his turn will take the 7 damage again. It's Alucard's turn. And he knows he's going to have to get clever if he really wants to beat Walter here. So he asks the GM, how much exactly can he see of me right now? The GM says, well, there's a lot of rubble around. I mean, the city was just bombarded. So You probably have 3/4 cover at worst, and total cover at best, depending on the angle. Alucard moves out and runs 35 feet towards the Hound, and makes sure to angle himself so that there is enough cover so that he won't be shot at, and also he doesn't want Walter to see what's about to happen. After he makes his full movement, he drops prone. Using his bonus action for Form of Dread to get an extra 23 temporary hit points, he feels he might need to play it safe here, so he wants the extra padding. Then he pulls out a piece of scrap paper, writes down that he's holding an action and what that action is, and hands it to the GM. The Hound, of course, moves and dashes, and at the end of its movement is now within 5 feet of Alucard, which triggers Alucard's held action, but Walter is not able to see what happens here. But from the GM perspective, we do see. His held action was to cast Seeming on the two of them, and, well, the Hound of Leonhem's stats aren't exactly the best, so it does fail. He's able to make himself look like the Hound, and he makes the Hound look like him. Round 7, Walter double moves in order to get in range again. At the end of his turn, takes another 7 points of damage. Alucard's turn is up, but he looks like the Hound. He pretends to attack the Hound. He purposely misses, and then he readies his action to sort of feign death. Again, writing this in notes to the GM. Probably it was underneath the Seeming. He would have had this whole thing planned out so that the GM would know what he wanted to do. The Hound attacks Alucard, who lets him hit it and only takes 12 points of damage. It doesn't even tear through his temporary hit points. Falls prone and feigns death. His bonus to deception is actually less than Walter's insight bonus, but Walter is so dead set and just focused on killing Alucard that he doesn't even think to ask for an insight check here, to make sure he believes what's going on. Really think about it? Who would here? The 8th round, and Walter moves 30 feet, bringing him within 90 feet of the duo. He exclaims how he's using both his action and bonus action to cast Eldritch Blast, and is going to pummel Alucard into mush. Or actually, he's using wire, so I guess it's more of he wants to twist and tear him apart, shred him. The GM obliges and allows him to do so. Having used his entire volley on here, it's only then that he realizes that it wasn't actually Alucard that he was targeting. He has nothing left he can do. He has to end his turn and take that 7 damage again. Alucard's turn, he quickens Dimension Door once again, bringing him within 5 feet behind Walter. Similar to round 2, he's going to load up his unarmed strike with his vampire abilities and magic items and waylay into Walter, who doesn't have temporary hit points to eat at this time. And it's here that Walter realizes he's lost. He's at 40 hit points, and even if Alucard isn't hitting him, it'll keep dropping. Alucard is at max hit points with some temporary hit points, and still has most of his spell slots, whereas Walter has burned through most of his reserves. He has 1 spell slot left he could maybe use to escape, but Alucard could easily chase him down using Dimension Door. He could use the likes of his Mystic Arcanum Force Cage to trap Alucard maybe, but he came here to kill Alucard, to prove that he was better than him, not to trap him, so that really doesn't work for what his goal was. He has to begrudgingly accept that Alucard is going to kill him here, and that's the whole fight. After this, Alucard's player would, I don't know, do whatever the GM has written up that allows him to absorb all of this blood and basically become immortal again, and Walter's player will have to accept that he's lost his only chance to kill Alucard. I do hope this has been interesting to listen to. Please let me know in the comments what you think. Drop a like on the video, share it with your friends. If I can find other situations that really intrigue me enough to do this again, then I will. The very first battle breakdown I ever did, I think, was the first fight scene in the Equalizer movies. That's one of my favorites, but that was using Pathfinder, not 5e. That's all I got for this video, so I hope all your 20s are natural, and I'll see you next time.